I hadn't even made it to the front porch before the neighborhood decided I didn't belong. 2 people in matching windbreakers jumped out of a silver SUV like I'd triggered some kind of HOA SWAT team. One pointed a phone at my face. The other waved a clipboard like a judge's gavel. I was standing there with a box of old vinyls balanced on my hip, chewing the house key Uncle Ray left me in his will. The windbreakers didn't care. They said I couldn't be here. This property, they claimed, was under enforcement. I remember spitting out the key and laughing, just enough to keep my voice steady. "It's my house," I told them. They didn't blink, said I wasn't on the occupancy roster, whatever that meant. It's strange. You think inheriting a home from the only family member who ever gave a damn would feel like coming home? But 30 seconds in, I was already being threatened with cops for unlocking my own front door. The clipboard lady told me to vacate immediately or they'd escalate. I told her to go ahead and maybe bring snacks. That didn't land well. But that's how my new life at Maple Ridge Summit started. On a mountain ridge that looked like a postcard and felt like a gated psychological experiment. My car still had city plates. My hands were full of Uncle Ray's memory, and I was already on some kind of HOA most watched list. The house was beautiful, though. Really. Wraparound deck, cedar siding, a sky so clear you could hear the stars hum at night. And all of it, every plank, every nail, every roof shingle, was mine. Ray left it to me because, in his words, I was the only one who ever showed up when the gutters backed up or the boiler groaned. I thought it was a joke at first, but the will was clear, and the deed had my name. Except the HOA didn't care about that. They had rules, and I had non-compliance. Apparently, Ray had been evicted. That's what windbreaker number 1 claimed. Something about unpaid assessments. It was total fiction. Ray was old school. He hand-delivered his HOA checks. Even when chemo left him too weak to climb stairs, he'd insist I drive him over so he could walk the envelope to the office himself. He didn't trust the website. Show me the eviction notice, I told them. That's board business, the woman snapped. Fine, I said. Show it to the police. They didn't. But they came back anyway, this time with 2 sheriff's deputies and a neighbor wearing a GoPro like he was auditioning for a viral takedown reel. But you want to know when I knew something was really wrong? When she showed up, Darlene, board president, leopard heels, frosted smile. She stormed onto the gravel like she owned gravity, took one look at me, and said, "If you inherited this home, you inherited the prior owner's removal. We don't allow squatters." That word hit like a slap. Squatter. Ray raised me more than my own parents ever did. That house held every part of him. His old thermos, his soldering tools, the crossbeam he carved initials into when I graduated high school. I squared my jaw. "So you evicted a man with cancer?" She faltered, just for a moment. The smile slipped. Then she snapped back into HOA mode, said there were legal proceedings, that I'd be hearing from their attorney. But I never got any proof. Just a cease and desist notice that night for unauthorized lighting and disturbance of the peace. The light was a single porch bulb. The noise? My podcast, at half volume. They gave me 24 hours to vacate, or face $500 a day fines. That's when I decided, game on. I'd read the horror stories. Ray used to email them to me with subject lines like "Nightmare in Suburbia" or "Why HOAs Deserve Therapy." He knew this place could turn ugly, and now they were trying to erase him like he'd never lived here. So I did what Ray would have done. I got organized. set up cameras, documented every visitor, emailed the board for copies of every policy, every rule they claimed I broke. They sent me a blurry PDF of the bylaws. No page numbers, no signatures, real professional stuff. I CC'd the county, the state. And Julian, my best friend from college, now a corporate attorney with a grudge against petty bureaucracy and a solid Wi-Fi signal. Then I started unpacking. Ray had been a pack rat, but a meticulous one. Every receipt filed, every drawer labeled. His office was a gold mine, and in one dusty corner sat a box labeled Maple Ridge Nonsense. Inside, email printouts, certified letters, board minutes, even a flash drive labeled HOA meetings, do not delete. I plugged it in, and that's when everything changed. Because on that drive, Ray had recorded their meetings. Not just minutes, actual recordings. Audio of the board flat out scheming to fabricate fines, mislabel violations, and bury homeowners in bureaucracy until they gave up or sold out. They wanted Ray gone because he didn't rent to tourists, didn't pay extra for special landscaping packages, didn't sign away voting proxies at block parties. Ray just paid his dues, mowed his lawn, and minded his business, and that made him dangerous. I played one clip for Julian. He paused, rewound, played it again. "That's conspiracy," he whispered. "Back it up, 3 copies. Do it now." I did, and kept listening. Meanwhile, things on the ground got stranger. One morning, a drone hovered outside my bedroom window, just staring. I followed it with Ray's binoculars, watched it land gently, like a metal vulture, on Darlene's back deck, filmed the whole thing. That afternoon, the water got shut off. Not just to me, to the elderly couple next door and the empty house across the street. HOA claimed valve issues, but when the health inspector showed up, he didn't buy it, ordered it restored. HOA tried to bill me for the reconnect. I paid it, under protest, filed the receipt as evidence. That night, Julian called, said he'd found someone, an attorney, a real bulldog. Name was Sierra Carr. I sent her the audio, the drone footage, the fake fines, the cease and desist, the blurry PDF, everything. She didn't blink. She just smiled and said, "We're going to have fun." How do you go to war with a mountain? You start small. Sierra wasted no time. Within 48 hours, she hit the HOA with demand letters so sharply worded, I could almost hear Darlene choking on her peppermint latte. We filed a quiet title action to block any attempt at fraudulent liens. Julian forwarded everything to the State Housing Board, and for good measure, we looped in the IRS. Because apparently, when a nonprofit accidentally profits off short-term rentals and consulting fees, someone should be asking questions. The board didn't take it well. By the end of the week, I had 6 new violation notices tacked to my front door. Offenses included interior paint without board review, because I repainted a guest room, and non-conforming landscaping, which turned out to be a potted fern I moved 2 feet to the left. Then there was the kicker, unlicensed animal. They claimed I had a dangerous dog. I don't own a dog. What I do have is a Bluetooth speaker I sometimes use to play barking sounds when I'm alone at night. It's an old city trick. Keeps porch pirates and creeps guessing. Apparently, the board hacked into my doorbell cam footage from my own camera, and used it to fabricate a violation. Said they had proof of the animal. They didn't realize I had full logs. I saw exactly when the footage had been downloaded, and from where. Spoiler alert, it was accessed from Perry's network, the board treasurer. I printed out the log, and posted it on the community bulletin board. Next to it, I pinned a copy of the state's privacy statute in 20-point bold font. Let them chew on that. The next morning, I found a flyer in every mailbox. My face photoshopped holding a sign that said, "Down with community." Cheap cutout job, wrong lighting, didn't even match the direction of the shadows. It was meant to humiliate me. Instead, it made me laugh, because that level of desperation, it's not power, it's panic. Alan from 3 houses down traced the metadata straight back to Perry's office computer. He emailed me the proof with the subject line, "Your HOA president flunks Photoshop." But the real turning point came with the envelope, the one Ray told me about. "If anything happens," he once said, sitting on the deck with a blanket around his knees, "check the blue envelope in the desk drawer. You'll know it when you see it." I'd forgotten. Buried in the stress, the lawsuits, the passive-aggressive flyer campaign. But that day, I remembered. Bottom drawer. Under a folder labeled Winter Roof Estimates 2009, a sky blue envelope sealed with old tape and a thumb smudge of dried coffee. Inside, a list of phone numbers, a post-it with the word Dennis, a small brass key, and a note in Ray's crisp handwriting. "If they try to take the house, call Mountain Title. Ask for Dennis." "Don't let them bury this," I called. Dennis picked up on the second ring like he'd been waiting 15 years. "Oh," he said, "you're the niece." Not a question. Turns out Ray had placed a conditional freeze on the property. A legal hold that required notarized affidavits for any lien, transfer, or encumbrance. Dennis had kept it flagged for years, just in case. "You're not just protected," Dennis said. "You're fireproof." By then, the HOA had already tried 3 separate lien filings, all blocked, all flagged, all reported. It saved me, and it infuriated them, because for the first time, their tricks weren't working. They didn't just want me gone. They needed me gone. Someone who wouldn't roll over, who documented everything, who had legal backup and a dead man's foresight. I was a crack in their wall. And cracks, given time, break foundations. That's when the board got bold. Or stupid. Or both. Midnight. I hear something out back. Soft, metallic clink. I check the camera. It's Perry, dressed in black, creeping through the bushes like a cartoon villain with bolt cutters in hand. I watch him unlatch the backyard gate, duck under a motion light, and start trimming my fence line. I dial the sheriff's department so fast I nearly drop my phone. When the deputy arrives, Perry's still out there, pretending to inspect for fire hazards on my private property. At 1 a.m, he got trespassed on the spot. I made popcorn while they wrote the report. The next day, the HOA sent me an official notice accusing me of obstructing emergency egress because I locked the same gate Perry snuck through. Said I was endangering the neighborhood. It would have been funny if it wasn't so unhinged, but here's the thing about pressure. It cracks some people and crystallizes others. Neighbors began taking sides. The Hoppers, an older couple next. Started bringing over casseroles, just said, "We're sorry." Left a pie dish with a sticky note. "Lemon, not poison." We checked. Carrie, the quiet woman who always wore headphones, slipped me handwritten HOA tips like I was in an espionage thriller. "Don't park facing downhill. They'll say your car's in ready escape position." I thought she was joking, until I got a warning for non-standard vehicle orientation. Alan offered to help build a fence. "Just for privacy," he said. But the smirk on his face said otherwise. We weren't neighbors anymore. We were resistance. Then the investigator called. State Housing Board. Her voice was calm. Too calm. We've received multiple complaints. Do you have evidence? Lady, I said. Do I? I sent her a Dropbox link, audio, emails, drone videos, forged violation notices, the doorbell cam hacks, even the HOA's budget. Because thanks to Ray's files, I had the last 5 years of assessments and spending records. She didn't say much. But she didn't have to. A week later, a court order landed like thunder. The HOA was to produce all financials, board minutes, and correspondence within 10 business days. What they turned in? A mess. Receipts missing. Consulting contracts with Darlene's cousin, landscaping fees that matched the cost of patio furniture, cash withdrawals for holiday decorations that lined up perfectly with when Darlene went on vacation. They said short-term rentals were banned. But Ray's files showed cash payouts, quiet ones, collected under the table. And yet, when the Hoppers reported a roof leak, they were told there weren't enough funds for repairs. That's when I stopped defending and started organizing. A group thread became a group chat. A group chat became a potluck. We called ourselves Neighbors Who've Had Enough. I brought Ray's files. Carrie brought cookies. Alan brought receipts, literal ones, he'd kept just in case. We printed flyers. We reviewed the bylaws, real ones, not the edited garbage the board sent out. We found a loophole and scheduled a special meeting. Half the neighborhood showed up. Darlene tried to shut it down, said it was illegal, said we were trespassing, but we followed every bylaw to the letter. And when the votes were cast, it wasn't even close. Darlene was out. Perry was out. The HOA board fell like wet cardboard in the rain. Alan was elected interim president. Mr. Hopper took over compliance. Carrie handled community outreach. Kiri, the neighbor I barely knew was a paralegal, volunteered to clean up documentation. The judge recognized the vote. The board tried to void the election. The judge shut them down. And just like that, everything started to change. We hired a real community manager, ran a full audit, posted the real budget for everyone to see, sold the espresso machine, erased the junk fines, canceled special assessments. Darlene listed her home for sale. Perry disappeared. The IRS followed the paper trail like a dog on raw meat. The state issued a consent decree. Transparency laws, mandatory training, new reporting rules. One by one, the shadows got smaller. And through it all, something beautiful happened. People came back outside. Mrs. Hopper started putting smiley stickers on the new swing set. We had a fire drill, a potluck. Kids sold lemonade instead of filing complaints. Newcomers were greeted with real bylaws, a loaf of Hopper bread, and a warning, keep every receipt, just in case. Even the drones came back, but this time they were traced to Perry's empty house. The deputy had a word, the drones vanished, and just when I thought it was over, a distant cousin showed up, claimed Ray wasn't of sound mind, wanted his share. Sierra shut it down in 10 minutes flat. Ray had recorded a message. If someone's watching this, he said, it means they're trying to take the house. Don't let them. And I didn't. We passed the audit results to the state. Turns out there were tens of thousands in maintenance with no receipts. More consulting fees routed to shell companies. Perry learned tax law the hard way. You know what I mean? Sometimes, the only way to clean a house is to throw open every window. Let the light pour in. Let the truth breathe. Now, Maple Ridge is more than a mountain neighborhood. It's a community, and every single one of us earned it. Why is it that peace feels loudest right after a storm? The silence in Maple Ridge Summit wasn't normal silence. It was earned. It was the kind of quiet that hums in your chest because it's full of things that aren't happening anymore. No more notices duct taped to doors. No more fake fines printed off someone's cousin's inkjet. No more GoPros stalking newcomers or drones buzzing like mechanical wasps outside bedroom windows. Instead, wind in the trees, laughter echoing off cedar walls. The occasional clink of tools fixing something real, not vandalism dressed up as a compliance check. We'd won. But winning doesn't feel like a movie ending. It doesn't come with theme music or credits. It just sort of settles into your bones. I remember sitting on the wraparound deck Ray built, that first Saturday after the board was dissolved. There was still dust in the corners, still worry, hanging from the eaves. But there was also something else. Movement. Life. Carrie's kids chasing bubbles across the yard, the hoppers waving from their new porch swing. Alan hammering a sign into his lawn that read, "Smile, you're not being surveilled." I think Ray would have liked that one. Kiri was the first to say what we were all thinking. "It doesn't feel like we took the place back," she said, sipping coffee from a chipped mug. "It feels like we woke it up." She was right. For years, this neighborhood had been sleepwalking, following rules written in fear and enforced by ego. No one had questioned them, not out loud. People were too busy, too tired, too afraid of getting a letter in the mail with words like escalation or legal remedy. But the moment one person stood up, really stood, the cracks showed. And behind those cracks were people, real ones, with casseroles and old grievances and hidden courage. It turns out, most of us had stories. The hoppers once got fined for having a handrail that didn't match community tone. Carrie was written up for wind chimes. Alan had been threatened with legal action over a rain barrel. All little things, all little knives, until someone finally said no, and the fallout was cleansing. Still, not everyone was ready to admit they'd picked the wrong side. A few neighbors still looked at me like I'd upended their fantasy, like I'd broken some illusion of harmony they were clinging to. I didn't blame them. It's hard to face the truth when you spent years defending a lie. But most people, they adjusted. Fast. Especially when they saw what a functioning HOA looked like. The new board published real budgets. No more espresso machines. No more consulting. Contracts with relatives who happened to own landscaping companies. Instead, funds went where they were supposed to. Road maintenance, gutter cleanings, helping the hoppers get a new roof when theirs finally gave out. There were even refunds. Refunds. I couldn't believe it. One day, an envelope arrived addressed to me, stamped with the new HOA seal. Inside was a check for $437 and a note. Refund of invalid fines assessed under prior administration. Apologies for the inconvenience. I stared at it like it was a unicorn. And for the first time since Ray's funeral, I cried. Not because of the money, because of the acknowledgement. Someone finally said, "We see you. You were right. We're sorry." That does something to you. Around that time, Rowan showed up again. We met once, by accident, literally. I nearly ran him over backing out of my driveway. He was crouched near the tree line, flashlight in one, hand, notebook in the other, owl banding, he explained, brushing dirt off his knees like it happened every day. "Sorry, didn't mean to scare you." "You were holding a flashlight in the woods at midnight," I pointed out. He smiled. Fair. He was a wildlife biologist doing a migration study, Stayed up on the ridge in an old trailer, blending in like he was born in moss. Ray used to feed him leftover stew and argue about composting. After the dust settled, Rowan brought over a loaf of nutty mountain bread and a thumb drive full of owl call recordings. You know, he said, gesturing. To my front yard, you've got a perfect nesting tree. We sat on the deck and listened to calls echo through the forest. He told me about feather patterns and prey ratios. I told him about fake dog barks and drones. Somehow it all made sense. Turns out gossip and field notes go together just fine. One night, a thunderstorm rolled in. Not just rain, lightning so. Close it shook windows. Rowan stayed. We lit candles and read Ray's old notes. His handwriting, jagged but certain. Lists of bylaws, names, warnings, a line I hadn't noticed before. If they ever come for this place, don't just fight back. Rebuild it better. And we were, not perfectly, not overnight. But the heart of this place, this stubborn, beautiful, carved from grit place, was beating again. Of course, peace is never absolute. It was maybe 3 months after the board flip when I got another letter. Legal, heavy envelope. Different kind of poison. A distant cousin I hadn't heard from in years was challenging the will. Said Ray wasn't of sound mind. Claimed undue influence. Wanted his portion of the house. I didn't panic. I called Sierra. She didn't even ask questions. Just opened the backup folder marked, if they try anything, and played a video. Ray, sitting at his desk. Eyes clear. Voice steady. If someone's watching this, it means they're trying to take what I left behind. Don't let them. I wasn't confused. I wasn't coerced. I chose her because she showed up. That's it. That video killed the challenge before it started. Cousin backed off so fast I half expected tire marks outside the courthouse. And just, like that, another ghost was gone. But one ghost lingered. Perry. No one had seen him since the court ruling. His house sat empty, curtains drawn, mail piled up. Then one night the drones came back. Only this time we were ready. The new HOA had security cameras, IP tracing, real oversight. It didn't take long to pinpoint the signal, broadcast straight from a router pinging inside Perry's garage. Sheriff? Paid a visit. The drones disappeared again, but I heard a rumor. Someone saw him at a rest stop 2 counties over, arguing on the phone about tax penalties and shell companies. Karma doesn't always knock. Sometimes it lingers outside your window. With a warrant, as for Darlene, she moved, quietly. Sold the house below market just to get out. Her name still whispered like a cautionary tale. Kids dare each other to ring her old doorbell and run. Her patio furniture was auctioned off to pay back assessments. I bought a chair. Left it on Ray's deck, next to his toolbox. Sometimes I sit in it and read. Sometimes I don't. And sometimes I just look out over the trees and think about how close I came to walking away. How easily I could have driven back to the city, let them win. How tempting it was to believe I didn't have the strength. But I stayed. Because Ray believed I could. Because someone had to. Because a house isn't just lumber and walls. It's memory. It's history. It's resistance. And because community isn't just a word you put on a sign. It's a verb. It's showing up when the gutters back up. It's defending people who bring casseroles instead of lawsuits. It's letting sunlight into the places shame used to live. Maple Ridge Summit isn't perfect. It never will be, but it's real now, and it's ours. We started printing welcome packets, real bylaws, real contact info, a coupon for Hopper's sourdough, and a handwritten note from me. Welcome to Maple Ridge. This place has scars, but so do most strong things. Keep your receipts, stand your ground, and never ever let someone in a windbreaker tell you who belongs. You'd think after all that, I'd sleep like a rock, but that's not how healing works. I still flinched every time an envelope appeared in my mailbox. Still scanned tree lines for drones. Still checked the porch light camera more than I checked my texts. Trauma doesn't leave all at once. It lingers. It clings to quiet moments and turns them sharp. Makes shadows look like threats. Makes silence feel like buildup. And I wasn't the only one. Carrie had a panic attack when she got a flyer for the spring potluck. Said it looked too much like the old HOA mailers. Alan tore down a bulletin board one morning because someone posted an anonymous complaint about a barking dog. It wasn't even his dog. He just snapped. Even Kiri, who never let anything rattle her, told me in a whisper that she'd started sleeping with her phone under her pillow. We're not used to being safe, she said. Feels fake. That stuck with me, because the war was over, but we were still bracing for the next ambush. The new board did everything right. Open meetings, transparent budgets, regular updates. But every time they made a decision about lawn height, parking hours, anything, someone in the group chat would ask, "Is this like the beginning again?" It wasn't. But the fear lived. On one night, I sat out on the deck alone, a blanket over my knees, mug of tea gone cold in my hands. Rowan had gone back to the wildlife center for a 2-week migration tag. The wind was soft, the stars sharp, and I realized something. Maybe the real fight wasn't against Darlene. Maybe it was against what Darlene left behind. Fear, division. The kind of quiet that poisons trust. So I started small. I made cookies. Not great ones. Slightly overbaked. But I left a box on every doorstep with a handwritten tag. Still here. Still neighbors. The next day, someone returned the tin with banana bread inside. Then came zucchini muffins. A handwritten note from Mr. Hopper. Your uncle would have liked this. I taped it to the fridge like a trophy. That week, the new board got a letter, handwritten, anonymous. It said, "I didn't vote, but I wish I had. Thank you for not giving up." We passed it around the meeting like it was a sacred relic. That was the thing. We'd been so busy fighting to reclaim the neighborhood, we'd forgotten what it meant to live in it. So we threw a block party. Not a BBQ. Not a political meet and greet. Party. Kiri made flyers that said simply, "Come, eat, sit." We hung lights from pine trees, rolled out folding tables, let the kids ride scooters down the main road with no HOA clipboard in sight. No one wore name tags. No one made announcements. People just showed up. Even the grumpy guy from Lot 17, the one who called the sheriff every time someone's recycling bin tipped over. He brought salsa. It was good. At some point, Carrie brought out a guitar. Hopper tapped on a box like it was a drum. A couple of us sang. Badly, loudly. No one cared. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't thought about Darlene in weeks. That's when I knew we'd won for real. Not because we ousted the tyrants, but because we'd rebuilt trust. That night, after most folks had gone home, I sat on the deck with Rowan and told him everything. The whole saga. From the first clipboard confrontation to the last refund check. He didn't say much, just held my hand and listened. When I was done, I asked the question that had been gnawing at me since the cousin tried to steal. The house. Why do people think they can take things they didn't earn? Rowan looked at me. Because they never think someone will stop them. That hit like truth, and I made a decision. I wasn't just going to protect Ray's house. I was going to protect everyone who lived under its roof now, even if the roof stretched across all of Maple Ridge. So when Julian called the next morning and said, we could go further, I said, how far? Because something had happened during that fight. Something I hadn't noticed. I'd changed. I wasn't just a homeowner anymore. I was a watchdog, a reluctant leader, the kind of person who sees rot and doesn't turn away. Julian laid it out. There was a state initiative pushing new HOA oversight, laws, transparency mandates, audit requirements, clear channels for homeowner complaints. But it needed stories, testimonies, proof that real people had suffered under petty regimes masquerading as policy. We've got all of that, he said. You lived all of that. I hesitated. Going public meant giving up privacy, inviting, trolls, reliving trauma, but it also meant protecting every scared homeowner who didn't have a Sierra, who didn't have a Ray. So I said yes. We compiled everything. Audio, videos, falsified notices, the drone footage, even a copy of the budget where the old board marked $3,200 for patio lighting that ended up as Darlene's birthday string lights. We sent it all, and people noticed. A week later, I got a call from a reporter, then another. At first I said, no. Then I said yes, and then I told the whole story. HOA tried to claim I couldn't live in my own inherited home, called the police, used fake documents, fabricated fines, tried to isolate me, and I fought back, with the law, with my neighbors. With the truth. The article ran with the headline, "The HOA tried to break her. Instead, she broke them." Dramatic, but not wrong. After that, emails poured in, from Arizona, Ohio, Florida, people trapped in the same kind of bureaucratic hell, people who'd lost homes, people who were one more fake violation away from giving up. I answered every single one, because no one else had. The state passed the oversight bill 4 months later. Maple Ridge became the poster child. They called us the little mountain that could. I preferred the neighborhood that remembered how. And just when I thought the final thread had been snipped, one more twist came knocking. Literally. It was mid-morning, spring sun warming the deck. I was planting snapdragons in Ray's old whiskey barrel planter, and then footsteps on gravel. I turned. A boy, maybe 13, thin arms, nervous eyes. "Are you the lady who fought the HOA?" I blinked. "Depends who's asking." He held out a folder. "My mom says to give you this. She said, you'll know what to do." Inside, a violation letter for a trampoline. The kids smiled. They said it was too joyful. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. Too joyful. I looked up at him. "Tell your mom I said it's perfect." Then I walked inside, opened my laptop, and began typing a new letter. Not for me this time, but for a family down the road, with a trampoline and joy and the beginning of their own story. Because that's what community is, in the end. It's not just where you live, it's how you fight, how you show up, how you rebuild, and how you make sure the next person doesn't have to go through hell just to turn on a porch light. No one talks about what happens after you win. The celebration ends. The bad guys move out. The lights come down. The casseroles stop coming. And the inbox that used to drip with threats just goes quiet. And then you start wondering if peace is supposed to feel this heavy. At first, everything was fine. Better than fine. We were the talk of the county. Maple Ridge reclaimed. The board ran smoothly. Carrie got the newsletters looking professional. Alan's budgeting actually made sense. For once, the community reserve wasn't just a vague slush fund for power-washed sidewalks and seasonal flags. People smiled when they walked their dogs. Kids rode bikes without fear of citations. There was laughter again. It sounded like freedom, but something in me stayed cautious. It's hard to relax when the ground you stand on was once stolen out from under you. That's when the little things started happening. Kiri pulled me aside one evening after the board meeting. "Did you see the proposal about lawn uniformity?" I frowned. "I thought we killed that." "We did, but it's back. Different language. Now it's about neighborhood cohesion standards." My gut twisted. Who proposed it? She looked down. Alan. That hit hard. Alan. The guy who helped tear down the old regime. The one who built a fence with me. The one who stood up to Perry in public and helped cook hot dogs at the first post-coup BBQ. He was a friend. He was us. I pulled the minutes. Read every line twice. There it was. Carefully worded, perfectly reasonable sounding, framed as a suggestion. But I'd seen this movie before. That's how it always starts. A suggestion becomes a vote becomes a rule becomes a weapon. Sat on it for 2 days, hoping it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't. At the next meeting, Alan presented his idea like it was no big deal. Just a way to keep the curb appeal balanced. As if a house with a wildflower garden was a threat to democracy. I waited until he was done. Then I raised my hand. "Are you suggesting we regulate personal landscaping again?" He didn't flinch. "Not regulate, just set some agreed-upon aesthetic standards." "You mean rules?" He smiled, too calm. "Guidelines." The room was quiet. Not scared quiet, but uncertain quiet. Like people didn't know if they should speak yet. Like they were waiting to see how it played out. I remembered that silence. I'd lived in it. It was the silence that let Darlene flourish. "I'm going to say this once," I said. "We didn't go through everything we did just to circle back to telling people how to decorate their yards. We have codes. We have safety policies. That's enough." Alan folded his hands. "I'm not trying to control anyone, but community has a visual identity. If we don't preserve it, things slip." I didn't raise my voice, but I didn't back down either. I'd rather let things slip than become what we fought to fix. The motion died on the table, but the air in the room shifted. I got a few nods. A few eyes looked away. A few people I trusted, didn't say a word. After the meeting, Alan caught me outside. His voice was quiet, hurt. "I thought we were building something better." "We are," I said. "That's why I stopped you." He nodded, slowly. "You really think it's the same as before?" "Not yet," I told him. "But that's the point. We stop it before it gets there." And I walked home with a heaviness I hadn't felt since the drone days. Because sometimes the rot doesn't come from invaders. Sometimes it grows back from inside. Over the next few weeks, more suggestions came up. One about standardizing porch decor. Another about quiet hours enforcement. They were soft, polite, packaged in terms like community wellness and shared values. But the message underneath was the same: conform, or you're the problem. That's when I remembered something Ray used to say. Control always wears a smile at first. That's how it gets in the door. So I did what I always do. I watched, I listened, and I started noticing patterns. People who spoke up in meetings suddenly had old compliance issues flagged. A neighbor who installed solar panels got a notice for roofline inconsistencies. Someone else got told their front door color wasn't harmonious. It wasn't Darlene's HOA. Not yet, but it was slipping. I called a few friends. Kiri, Hopper, Carrie. We met late at night on my deck with tea and quiet frustration. It's like a weed, Carrie said. We pulled it out, but the roots were deeper than we thought. Hopper was more blunt. Power's a drug. Doesn't matter who's holding the gavel. Eventually someone wants to swing it. We didn't want a coup. Not again. We wanted balance, accountability. So we drafted a new proposal. We called it the Homeowner's Bill of Rights. Clear, simple, non-negotiable. No aesthetic enforcement without full community vote. No violations issued without evidence, and board review. Absolute right to access financials, transparency on citations and appeals. And the big one, term limits for board members. Because sometimes even good people stay too long. And the longer they stay, the more they forget why they were elected. We emailed it to everyone. We posted it on the bulletin board. We printed copies and walked them door to door. Alan wasn't thrilled. He called it reactionary. Said we were creating bureaucracy. I asked him if he remembered the first time Darlene used that exact word. He didn't answer. At the next meeting, we voted. The room was packed, just like that first uprising. People raised hands. The motion passed by. A landslide, Alan didn't quit, but he did slow down. So did the guidelines. And Maple Ridge took a deep breath. It wasn't war. It was democracy, and that's messier, harder. But it's real. Real like Mr. Hopper repainting his door lavender without asking permission. Real like the Hernandez kids building a cardboard castle on their lawn and spray painting it with stars. Real like me planting wildflowers and leaving the weeds in, because not everything beautiful is tidy. Rowan came back around that time. He'd been out tagging bears. Brought me a notebook full of paw prints. You guys done fighting yet? He asked with a crooked grin. I smiled. We're learning how to not fight. It's harder. He nodded. We sat out under the stars again. No drones, no threats. Just the sound of an owl, circling, watching. I thought about Ray then, about everything he gave me. This house, this fight, this stubborn, stitched-together place on a ridge. He didn't just leave me property. He left me a purpose, to defend, to rebuild, to remember. That week, a new family moved in. Young couple, baby in tow, nervous, tired, smiling anyway. I walked over with a loaf of bread and the homeowner's Bill of Rights in a plastic sleeve. Welcome to Maple Ridge, I said. We're not perfect, but we're trying. The woman smiled. Anything we should know? I thought for a second. Then I said, don't let anyone tell you you don't belong. Ever. Not here, not anywhere. Because sometimes the biggest battles don't come with sirens and lawsuits. Sometimes they come softly, with clipboards, with charm, with good intentions twisted into something cold. And that's why we stay vigilant, not paranoid, just present. Because community isn't a fortress, it's a fire we keep lit together. It started with the letter, not in my mailbox. Not stamped with an HOA seal or court docket or return address from some cousin I never met. This one was different. It was tucked inside a cardboard box. One of Ray's. I'd been meaning to go through it for months. His old tool set, a frayed map of the ridge trails, and folders full of things that didn't look important until they suddenly were. The letter was folded in half, tucked behind an old warranty. My name on the outside, in case. I don't get to say this. I didn't open it right away. Something about it felt final. Heavy. Like a door I wasn't sure I was ready to open. So I waited. Put it on my nightstand. Stared at it every night for a week, and then I read it. His handwriting was the same. Slanted. Neat. Undeniably his. But the words? They weren't like the ones he left in notes or grocery lists or the email rants about HOA creeps with garden shears. These were raw. Honest. Ray talked about regret. About time. About the way he'd built this house to be more than wood and nails. He wrote about loving someone once and not telling her until it was too late. About wanting me to have something. Steady, because he never had children of his own. And then this line, "You're braver than me, you know. You do the things I only ever thought about." I don't know how long I sat there. The letter in my lap. The past pressing down like mountain air in a thunderstorm. See, I'd spent months fighting bad bylaws, corrupt leaders, and invisible surveillance. But grief? That came later. After the court hearings, after the press interviews, after the neighbors had gone to bed and the porch light buzzed in the quiet. That's when it hit. The silence where Ray should have been. I found myself reaching for the phone to call him after the Bill of Rights passed. I wanted to say, "You were right. It worked." But the number didn't exist anymore, and that's a different kind of hurt. Not sharp. Just hollow. Like an unfinished sentence. So I leaned into the work again, because that's what we do, right? We patch up the roof. We answer emails. We chase the next fire. But in the quiet, I was unraveling. Rowan noticed first. He didn't say anything for days, just made dinner more often, walked slower, stayed quiet longer, until one night, when I forgot to eat, and he put down the dishes mid-scrub. "You're still fighting, even when there's no one left to fight." I stared at him. "What else am I supposed to do?" "Grieve," he said. "Rest. Maybe forgive yourself for surviving." Didn't answer, because part of me still didn't believe I had. Survived, I mean. The physical fights were over. But the scars? They had layers. Invisible ones. Every time I passed Darlene's old lot, I remembered her voice. Every time the wind rattled the porch, I thought about drones. Every time I saw an envelope, my chest tightened. And that's the truth. No one tells you. Justice doesn't undo trauma. It just buys you space to heal. If you let it, and I hadn't. So I tried. I started walking again, just around the ridge. Short loops, breathing slow. Letting the trees do what they do. Just be. I wrote a letter back to Ray. Didn't know where to send it, so I folded it up and tucked it in the floorboard under the hallway register, his old hiding spot for spare keys and cash. Felt right. Talked to the neighbors again. Not as a leader, not as a survivor. Just as a person. Kiri and I went for tea. Alan taught me how to use a chainsaw properly, because apparently I was a safety violation waiting to happen. Carrie dragged me to a trivia night at the new community center we'd built from repurposed HOA equipment funds. We lost horribly, but we laughed, loudly and slowly. Life seeped back in, not like before, better, realer. Even the weird things felt like signs of healing. One morning, I woke up to a squirrel nesting in the flower bed Ray used to curse at. It had dragged in scraps of torn flyers, the same ones with my face on them, years ago. And there it was, a nest, built out of the war. I sat there and laughed until I cried. Because maybe that's what healing is. Not forgetting, not erasing, but building something tender out of what tried to destroy you. That same week, we held our first real community election. Peaceful, fair, transparent. I didn't run. People asked me to. Pressed my hand, sent me texts. But I knew it was time. Time for someone else to carry the torch. I'd done my part, survived the siege, fought the ghosts, laid the foundation. Now someone else could paint the walls. Instead, I stood by the table with HOA, the ballots and handed out pens, smiled at new faces, watched the next generation of leaders rise without fear, and when the votes were counted, and the new board took their places, I felt something shift. Relief. A kind I hadn't known I was waiting for. That night, Rowan and I sat on the back deck. The moon hung low over the ridge. An owl called from somewhere deep in the trees. "Do you think it's over?" I asked. He looked at me, eyes soft. "No, but I think you are." And he was right. Not done with the neighborhood. Not done with helping, but done being at war. I was something else now. A keeper of the story. A guardian of the truth. A witness to what happens when people stand up, not with fists, but with receipts, recordings, and casseroles. A living memory of what used to rule here, and a promise that it wouldn't return. It had been nearly a year since the special election. The new board was solid. No drama, no secrets. Just regular humans figuring it out one vote at a time. I kept my distance. Not out of bitterness, just necessity. There's a quiet kind of wisdom in knowing when to step back. When your season of the story has ended. When it's time to let other hands carry the torch you once gripped with white knuckles. But peace doesn't always mean stillness. And the past? It doesn't always stay buried. It showed up on a Tuesday. I remember because the weather had just turned. Bright sky, warm breeze, windows cracked open for the first time since late fall. I was dusting Ray's old record player when the knock came. 3 taps. Soft, polite. But something in my chest pulled tight. I opened the door. A man stood there, mid-30s, neatly dressed. Not from here, that much was clear. City shoes, a leather folio tucked under one arm. His eyes, curious. Not hostile. Not warm either. "Hi," he said. "You don't know me. But I think we're connected." I didn't say anything, just waited. He reached into the folio and pulled out a photo. Ray, smiling, younger. Standing next to a woman I didn't recognize, and a little boy with his hand on Ray's shoulder. "That's me," he said, pointing to the boy. "And that's my mother." I looked closer, and then I understood. Ray had always said he never had kids. But maybe what he meant was no official ones. Her name was Margaret, the man said. They weren't married, but they were something. I stepped aside, gestured for him to come in. We sat in the kitchen. I poured tea. He didn't touch it. "I'm not here to fight," he said. No lawyers, no claims. I don't want the house. I don't even need answers. I just want to know who he was. For a moment, I just looked at him, same eyes, same jawline, same quiet way of waiting, and I realized Ray hadn't told him, hadn't left a note, hadn't said goodbye, just like he hadn't said goodbye to me. That letter I found? It was probably meant for both of us. So I told him everything. About the house, the HOA, the war, the way Ray stockpiled evidence like some secret resistance agent. The flash drives, the labeled folders, the cassette tapes of meetings no one knew were being recorded. I showed him Ray's old workshop, the list of favorite tools taped to the wall, the porch swing he built from scratch because he refused to pay $800 for something held together by hope and staples. And then I showed him the garden. Ray's sanctuary. Wild, uneven, full of things that had no business growing together, but still did. The man, his name was Malcolm, stood there. For a long time, just breathing. He used to send me postcards, he said quietly. Never return address, just photos of places, lakes, trails, sometimes blueprints. Blueprints? Malcolm nodded. One had this place, the porch. I never knew what it was until now. I handed him the blueprint Ray had drawn by hand when expanding the back deck. On the bottom corner, someday this will be yours. I never knew who yours meant. Maybe it was both of us, or maybe Ray didn't know either. We spent the day together, sorting boxes, playing one of Ray's favorite jazz records on the old player with the scratchy speaker. Malcolm didn't cry. Neither did I. But the silence between us said everything. That night after he left, I sat on the porch until the moon came up, and I thought about legacy. Not the kind you put in a will, the kind you live without even meaning to. Ray had planted seeds everywhere. In me. In Malcolm. In this house. And even in the people who'd once tried to take it all away. I realized something then. You don't always get to choose who carries your story forward. Sometimes it's a niece you raised between roof leaks and breakfast burritos. Sometimes it's a son you never claimed, but always remembered. And sometimes it's a whole neighborhood, a place once ruled by fear and pettiness now held together by potlucks, porch lights, and a laminated homeowner's bill of rights. Later that week, I got a message. The state wanted to feature Maple Ridge in a documentary on HOA reform. Ground Zero, they called it. I said yes. Not for me. For Ray. For every neighbor who stayed silent too long. For the ones still fighting their own clipboard wars. Filming started in spring. They interviewed Carrie, who cried talking about how she used to sleep, with her blinds closed and her shoulders clenched. They talked to Mr. Hopper, who explained how he'd almost sold his home, twice, before the board flip gave him hope again. They even tracked down the drone footage. Played it on a big screen at the community center. People gasped, laughed, cheered when it cut to the vote that ousted Darlene. At the end, the director asked if I had anything left to say. I thought about it. Then I said this. Sometimes justice looks like a courtroom. Sometimes it looks like an eviction. But here, it looked like a casserole, a cease and desist letter, a porch light that stayed on even when everything felt dark. And if you think one person can't change a community, then you've never met someone stubborn enough to hold on to the truth until it becomes undeniable. They clapped. I didn't cry until later. Alone. Back in the house. With one last letter in my hand. This time, it was from Malcolm. A postcard. No return address. Just a photo of the garden. On the back, it said, "I see it now. Thank you." I pinned it above Ray's workbench, next to his favorite wrench, right where it belonged. It's strange how the ending doesn't feel like an ending. There was no final battle, no closing argument, no ribbon-cutting ceremony that said, "You made it." Just days, then weeks, then seasons passing without incident. That's how I knew that Tio's storm had moved on. One morning, I woke up and realized I hadn't checked the porch camera in over a month. The folder on my desktop labeled HOA evidence sat unopened, dusty, and I let it stay that way, because some things belong in the past. Rowan. And I made a habit of walking the ridge at dusk. No plans, no talking, just the sound of pine needles beneath our boots, the wind combing through the trees like fingers. Every time we reached the overlook, I'd stop and stare at the lights below, scattered like fireflies. That was Maple Ridge. Now, not perfect, not spotless, but alive and safe. Sometimes I'd wonder, what if I hadn't come? What if I'd walked away that first day, when the windbreakers barked orders and Darlene tossed legal threats like confetti? What if I'd packed up Uncle Ray's vinyls, turned around, and left the mountain behind? Would they have won? Would anyone have fought? Would the rot have kept growing, quietly, until everything decent had been swallowed by it? I don't know, and maybe that's not the right question. Maybe the better one is this. What happens when someone decides not to back down? Because that's what started it. Not strategy, not lawsuits, just refusal. Refusal to be erased, to be intimidated, to be dismissed. As a squatter in the place someone you loved built with their own hands. It wasn't about me. It was never just about me. It was about every neighbor who'd stayed silent. Every homeowner who'd paid made-up fines just to keep their peace. Every child who whispered instead of playing too loud, and every person watching right now who's thinking, could I do the same? You can, and if you ever need proof, remember this place. Maple Ridge. The neighborhood where a corrupt board fell because one woman wouldn't turn off her porch light. The place where evidence mattered more than intimidation. Where a man's legacy lived not in court filings, but in garden beds and floorboards and the swing he built with a crooked smile and a level that never quite worked. That's where change comes from. Not power, but persistence, not law degrees, but lived truth. We still get newcomers. They show up with moving trucks and cautious smiles, wondering what kind of place they've landed in. I always try to be the first to welcome them. I bring a real copy of the bylaws, a handwritten note, and a coupon for Hopper's sourdough. Sometimes I bring banana bread. It never turns out as good as Mrs. Hopper's, but I try, and I always say the same thing. This place has history. It has scars. But you're safe here. Just keep every receipt. And if anyone tries to tell you you don't belong, tell them we've heard that one before. They usually laugh, but they remember. Because stories have weight. They anchor us. They whisper reminders in the dark when someone's standing at your door with a clipboard and a smile and an agenda. That's why I told mine. So you'll remember. And so will the next person. Because someone always tries again. Someone always thinks they'll be the one to control the light, the air, the noise, the people. But here's what they forget. People are louder than paperwork. Neighbors are stronger than bylaws and legacy. Legacy doesn't belong to whoever holds the gavel. It belongs to the one who kept the swing from falling down, to the one who showed up when the gutters backed up, to the one who said, "This is my home. You don't get to take that from me. And so, if you're watching this now, maybe from your own porch, wondering if it's worth the fight, it is. You are, and when it feels like you're the only one left standing, you're not. We're here, we always will be. Welcome home.